Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. John Riossi, American banker. Thank you for joining us. Chris Hurd, CEO, founder of Fountainhead. What's on your shirt there, Chris?
It's the Chelsea tour of America this summer.
Your nod to the monarchy. Very good.
There you go. For all things English. Yeah.
There's a certificate. We got a lot of news, a lot of Washington update. But first, we want to ask a couple poll questions. Number one, in planning for 23, I can't believe I can say that, fiscal year 23, geez. Do you expect your SBA 7A loan portfolio volume to What do you think, John? What do you think? Is that in line with what you were thinking?
Yes, I was going to say a significant majority would probably say increase based on everyone I've talked to, which has been a tremendous amount of people, but everybody uniformly is looking for it to do more next year.
Yes, and when we're in economic downturns, SBA lending is very attractive, and that banks want to go to that. Second question is, choose one. What is the most important to your SBA loan department next year in your planning? So when you're thinking about it, which of these four is the number one factor that you want to see in your performance? What do you think the answer is going to be, Chris? There we go.
I would have expected loan volume, yeah. Especially coming off last year where it dipped a little bit from the year before.
Logistics, backroom, we get a lot of that. I know when we do our compensation surveys, people are always complaining about, especially the BDOs, getting the deals approved. They're getting logged. They're getting bogged down, logged in. Go ahead, John.
I was going to wanted to ask Chris a quick question because you mentioned loan volume this fiscal year, which is just about over. And in one sense, it is down, but last fiscal year, 2021, was such a unique year that if you take that out of the picture, it's the best year ever. So I imagine, it's hard to take it out of the picture because it was just last year, but it seems to me it was a good year this year.
It's been a good year, yeah. It's definitely down from last year, which was the best year of all time for sure, by far.
Yeah. Can you share what you expect your volume to increase to next year, Chris? I know you're private. If you don't want to share it, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't even know yet. Actually, we're just starting now for budget planning for next year. Yeah.
John, have an idea of what overall the lenders are going to do? What percentage increase in 2023?
No, I think probably everybody is in Chris's boat where they probably expect to have a good 2023, maybe even a better 2023 than 2022. But beyond that, they can't say like 7%, 10%, 12%. But I was just thinking, it looks like the overall numbers for the program are going to come in somewhere around $25 billion. And if you just say 10% above that, that's now beginning to approach that fiscal year 2021 because you're looking possibly, approaching $28 billion in overall volume if you do 10% above this year.
Chris, I always like to track supply and demand. Is there enough demand out there to warrant that type of increase?
Yeah, I definitely think there is. And frankly, we're just at the tip of demand. I think as the economy continues to slow down, and I would fully expect it will with the Fed's aggressive rate hikes, I think you're going to see a lot of our conventional competitors go to the sidelines, which is when SBA always shines even more. And I think it'll be a big shot in the arm for folks in our industry for sure.
John, we saw last time we had this economic turn down, a lot of banks are out of business. This time around, they're not. Do you anticipate that changing? What do you see of the future community banks?
I don't foresee any big problem with community banks because, as people no doubt remember, in 2011, it was there were massive credit issues. This time, it's just the opposite, and banks have been talking about credit normalizing, and not just banks, but lenders talking about credit normalizing, So they're expecting at some point to see more delinquencies, more problem loans, but it just hasn't happened yet. Everybody is.
That's
Really
great.
good.
That's
Really
a great factor. We need to always. This is not 2008. This is an entirely different economic downturn.
Well, and you just have balance sheets of lenders or corporations are so much stronger than they were back during that
Oh,
time.
absolutely. Yeah.
And we're not going to have a real estate recession anyway. I mean, it may feel like
No,
that.
and employment's still strong, and yeah, I mean this is not. When they write the history books, yeah, we're in a recession, but it may very well be a minor recession. Hey,
Well,
John.
this is what I said something to a CNBC reporter this morning is I think, the Fed's gotten a lot of grief for having called this inflation transitory, but I have a feeling that years from now, we're going to look back and say, well, it really was transitory. It just was transitory over a 2-year period, for instance, not necessarily a 6-month period, which is what we all wish for. So,
We're not being hit over the head every day with a 2x4 like we were 10 years ago or 12 years ago.
right.
Hey, John, there are discussions ongoing about expanding the number of institutions that can grant SBA loans, specifically fintechs, specifically more non-bank lenders. Where are we? 2 questions. Where are we on that, and how do you feel about that?
Well, I think where we are is where we have been for years and years with this is that SBA, as opposed to, say, FDIC, as opposed to the Federal Reserve, as opposed to the National Credit Union Administration, does not have a huge staff of examiners. And they rely on those agencies I just mentioned, NCUA, the Federal Reserve, the banking, FDIC, the OCC, to do the lion's share of that type of work to keep to ensure that the banks are functioning properly, credit unions as well, are doing the right thing. In order to bring on lots and lots of fintechs, nobody regulates them. So that would make it incumbent on SBA to regulate them, and that would mean creating something that doesn't exist now, which is a cadre, a big staff of examiners. And then that you would ask the question, why are we just examining this group of lenders? Why aren't we examining everybody else? So Chris and Fountainhead, you're in a select category as one of those 13 people, but the reason that number is so small is because that's what SBA is determined it can handle. And to do otherwise would mean changing a very successful business model.
Chris, well, maybe you can comment on the side. Over the years, I love watching the discussion. The pendulum swings in terms of, no, 14, that's it, no more. Or, open up the floodgates. Yeah, we will, because we want more credit out there. So it definitely goes in a cycle. I'm not going to ask you the question. I assume you, as one of the 14 license holders, don't want additional competition, and I respect that. But
Well, but it goes more than that, Bob. I mean, look, I would say, and I was in Washington last week talking about this very thing. I mean, if we're gonna get rid of the moratorium that's been in place since the early 90s, we need to do it responsibly. And my 2.5-year saga to get approved for our SBLC license needs to be reflected, particularly when you might allow what I call some of the foxes in the henhouse. Some of these fintechs, they're all technologists first. They're not lenders. So if you're going to allow somebody in like that, frankly, you should probably have more scrutiny of them, number one. And number two, I know that, there's always the concern about trying to get access to capital out there for the smallest of small businesses. But I think what you're going to see as an outcropping from PPP, we're already seeing it across the board. A lot of the experienced SBA lenders are taking the technology they used during PPP and they're now applying it, and they're starting to go down market, and you're going to see more and more small 7A loans made. We're in that same boat. We're working on that right now ourselves. And I think that addresses the so-called problem as opposed to trying to, open up the moratorium and let others come in. There's a lot of logistical problems with this too. Where do you get to price the licenses at? What kind of oversight, as John was saying? I mean, there was only 9 full-time employees dedicated to this at the agency, and actually several of them have just left over the last
Maybe they
90
can peel off some of that higher risk.
Right. Yeah, so there's a little bit of a lack of institutional knowledge as well right now. So you have this confluence of all these problems. I don't know that this is going to go anywhere right now. I'm familiar with the Senate bill that's been drafted and the House bill that's the companion, but there's only 4 co-sponsors. I'm not so sure there's a lot of interest in this at this moment, and we'll see what happens with the next Congress too.
Well, Chris, that was a nice segue. We have a picture. Let's put it up, Joseph. You presented Senator Marco Rubio with
My giant head is what that looks like. Yeah.
with the Coleman Main Street Lender of the Year. He was very gracious.
You
Joseph,
asked me to deliver it to him in person, and
that's right. Let's make sure we do that link for that. Tell us about the presentation and tell us what his current thinking is about the agency.
well, I think you're being very generous by calling it a presentation. I think it was, we just hung out for a little bit and chatted about various things. But I mean, look, he's very proud of what his contributions during the Paycheck Protection Program era. Quite proud of that, as he should be. Is concerned about the agency and where it's headed at the moment. But, he's still on the Small Business Committee officially, although he's no longer the chair. I don't know if he'll stay on the Small Business Committee in the next Congress. I guess we'll see. And, of course, he has to get reelected as well. So, I think all of us have some concerns about the agency right now, as if they're staffed correctly, if they've got enough resources. They're having a lot of pressure on them, as you talk about all the time, Bob, with some of the fraud matters, whether it's EIDL or PPP or the other grants. And frankly, that goes right back to what we were just talking about getting rid of the moratorium. I mean, if you just want to look at the fintech fraud, the fraud that came through the fintech channel, obviously it's much higher than any other channel, which also ought to give people pause on some of that.
John, I've said this Small Business Committee is the most bipartisan committee in the Senate. They're all on the same page on that. Go through the scenarios. What happens if the Democrats retain control? Who's the chair? And if the Republicans flip the Senate, who will be the chair? Do you know offhand?
Well, if the Republicans flip the Senate,
not John.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
Better position to talk to me, so I was interested to hear what he had to say.
All right. I will. Chris, go ahead.
All right. So, and John, jump in, obviously. So Joni Ernst from Iowa is sort of the consensus favorite to become the new chair of the Senate Small Business Committee, assuming the Republicans flip the Senate. If she's not, then I don't know if things are going to stay the same. There's usually a shakeup every couple of years on a committee like the Small Business Committee, because a lot of folks view it as sort of a stepping stone to a much more powerful, prominent committee. On the House side, I think you're going to have Ludemeyer will be the new chair. I think that's pretty well set in stone at this point. I'm pretty sure Velasquez will just switch chairs and go from being the chairwoman down to the ranking member. So that's kind of what I expect.
She's very passionate about this issue, so I don't see her going anywhere, whether she's in the majority or minority. Ludemeyer, a small businessman. I know he has car dealerships. He's helped me out. Kansas. Where's he from?
Missouri.
Where, John?
He's Missouri. I don't know. It's Kansas City, Missouri. That much I don't know, but he represents Missouri. And he's from a banking family.
Right.
So he's like. I wanted to mention, Chris made a great point about the small loans, and we had a big controversy over that with the proposal where SBA was going to get in and start making small loans. But I think, and I was just thinking about this, maybe the big story, the big overarching story, it doesn't involve any one institution or one lender, but it involves many of them, is they've moved in to that to fill that gap, and they're moving in, and the market doesn't move at light speed, and I'm sure the administrator and others would like this to happen faster, but what is happening is that lenders, just like you said, are making more small loans, and more are going to be doing that. So
that's right.
So
particularly, it'll be very attractive, John and Bob, going forward, as we talked about how the economy's slowing. Even the conventional lenders, they may want to participate in SBA loans, the smaller SBA loans, so they can get the government guarantee and de-risk themselves a little bit as well.
Very good. John, anything else you're working on that's exciting?
I just wrote a story following up on something that I had written about before, and in fact, Chris was a source for that. It's Live Oak announced that they're going to hire 204 people. Not all of them are going to be lenders. A lot of them will be technology people. A lot of them will be support staff. Some will be lenders. And they're getting some grants from the state and local officials in North Carolina to help them with the hiring and with the building they plan to add another building. Yeah. So, but I think that they are one of many, many banks and lenders and companies that are in expansion mode. And you mentioned when we talked about this, Chris, that you are at Fountainhead. I know other banks are as well. You know, talking about that trend we mentioned when we first got out, people are interested in SBA. They're going to do more lending.
Hey, Joseph, make a note. John has that fan going. I think we need to have my palm trees waving like that. That's hey, real quick, make sure when you're doing 2023, you take advantage of our compensation reports. We do charting for all positions in the department. Joseph, you put up that slide real quick. Anyway, gentlemen, John, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. Chris, thank you. I know you guys are busy. Appreciate your insights. Thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street. One entrepreneur.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today for today's episode. If you like today's content, hit that subscribe button to subscribe to our channel and click that bell icon to get notified about our latest videos. Thank you again for joining us today and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time. Catch you next time.